Welcome to a new Paradigm of Education podcast. I'm your host, Monique Sayers, and today's special guest is Jeneen Gacek. Before I introduce her, I just wanted to introduce our podcast. A new Paradigm of Education is a shift in paradigm, moving away from the teacher sitting at the front of the desk of a classroom to a whole global shift in humanity, where you can welcome in entrepreneurs, you can welcome in mentors, parents, even students to all rise up to the role of leadership for this earth. So with that in mind, I'd love to introduce Jeneen. She's an entrepreneur, a fun-loving enthusiast, an unschooling mama of 2 teenagers, and she lives in Bali, Indonesia, which actually is where I used to live, and I just love. She shares her personal experience, research, and transformative methods in different courses that she runs for mindful parenting and joyful learning, learning-centered and playful creative approaches. She also facilitates a range of different workshops which around the topic of self-directed learning for parents and for children and for teens. And she can introduce those to you in a moment. Jeneen also focuses on transformational benefits of self-directed learning with other families. The platform Remindful Life focuses on helping parents to support their children to live happy, healthy, interest-driven lives in a rapidly changing world, which is just so necessary for today. And I'm so grateful to connect with you. So I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself. If you could further introduce yourself to our audience today, I'd love that. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Happy to. First of all, I love your definition of the new paradigm, because I think it's such an important conversation for us to be having right now. I ended up in this place kind of accidentally. We were, as a family, living in Bali, and our kids were at an international school. And we got to the point where something needed to shift. So something was shifting within our family and with our kids, and I started looking for alternatives, something that would give us more flexibility, something that would maybe be more engaging. And so I fell upon a company that based in Canada that was doing self-directed learning. And once I read it, it just, my whole soul lit up, because it was nothing that I had ever heard of before, but it was everything that I pictured learning to be. So we talked to the kids about it and said, we're looking for some more flexibility. This is what we found. What do you think? And they were totally open to the idea. And so we kind of did it as an experiment. It was like, well, let's try this for a year and just see how it feels and see what happens. And ultimately, that's where, the whole transformation started, and it completely changed our life, the kids' lives, our lives as a family, and us as parents completely shifted our thoughts, belief systems, how we did things, what we believed in. And so it was that point forward that I started doing more research and diving deeper into this exact same thing that you're talking about, this new paradigm of what could education look like. And I was able to witness it in my children as we were doing it and going through all the different stages of what that looks like, what that transformation looks like when you start to question and you start to look for different answers. And so seeing that made me a true believer in this need for a shift. And so that's now what I'm focusing on, is really trying to help parents and families and children just move through those stages to try to have a better understanding of what is the direction that we're going and what can we do to help our kids for the future.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you are such a conscious parent to be considering that in the first place and taking a stand that it's needed and it's necessary. And I guess having that awareness of what your children need as well, and being, I guess, bold and brave enough to kind of step into unknown territory rather than just keeping within a box and saying, oh, we'll just figure it out within the box and, like expanding a little. But this, what you're already doing, is a breakthrough. It is already a total shift in the new paradigm. And I'm just so grateful to connect with you and your wisdom. And I know you have a lot to share, because there's a few different ways I want to ask you. Like, first of all, maybe I could ask, how did they adjust from going to like what we can call a normal school, if you want to call it a normal school? I know it was still a beautiful, open, expansive school in Bali, which of course is not exactly mainstream, but how did they adjust from that to going to just is it called self-directed learning? What you call their education. Could you just explain that maybe to help parents to understand that adjustment or how you adjust it?
I mean, I think it first started, and I think this is an interesting point, because I think, well, first thing, I think it looks really brave, because it seems quite alternative. But I think what actually happens, I've done a lot of interviews with other parents that have done it, it typically happens in a certain way. You think that you're taking children from a school environment, and then you're going to do something similar at home. And so I think that's typically what happens is the kids come home, and then it's a bit more interest driven. But you still have a lot of those same ideas of what it's going to look like. So you're still trying to have a schedule. You're still trying to have subjects. You're still trying to have a way to evaluate. And so I think that's kind of where we started, where it was, the kids asked me, they're like, well, how is this going to work? What are we going to do? And I was like, really, I don't know. Like, I really don't. I didn't really have much of an idea of how it could look different until we started. And I think that's where you start to really see it unfold, is just actually doing it and seeing what's working, what's not working, what should we adjust? And so I think at that point it started to look a little bit more like unschooling, which is kind of that idea of unlearning and letting go of some of the patterns and systems that are in place and that we feel is associated with learning. So, we started with, 1 hour increments in the day, with like switching between subjects. And then when we reevaluated and we said, okay, well, is this working? Like, do you like that? And do we like that as parents, as a family? Is it working? And then when you realize it's not, and it's frustrating, and you're not really in a flow, and you're not really allowing yourself to follow your interests, then you start to adjust and go, okay, well, is it 2 hour increments? Is it morning, afternoon? Is it, creative on one day, more structured on another day, and I think it's that playing that starts to happen. And I think, and in between those stages is just really trying to be okay with letting go of this idea of structure and subjects and time and evaluation, and trying to really talk through it, that it's like, is it okay that we didn't follow the schedule today? Is it okay that I'm feeling really frustrated with this? And, I just need to take a break and maybe do some reading or playing, And so it was a lot of that. I think it was a big mixture of all of those things. It was trying to take school home, realizing it didn't work, trying to stop doing the things that we had been conditioned to do our entire lives, and a lot of discussion about what that felt like, what felt good, what didn't feel good, as the kids and as the parents, because it's something that you're trying to make work for the whole family. So it was an interesting transition. I wouldn't say it was easy, but I wouldn't say it was also difficult either. I guess it was a mix of both, just trying to really be okay with it and to be open to it looking differently. But yet still, you're, as a parent, wanting what's best for your children and trying to find what could that look like.
Yeah, I love what you've shared around that, because the old paradigm, and probably even still at this moment in transition to what I would call a new paradigm, I feel like we're in a transition period. A lot of that is still the known, isn't it? And a lot of that is a place of structure and a certain way of being, and to kind of debunk that and just go, okay, let's create a new paradigm. Let's shift that completely. It does take a practice. It's a letting go, and it's really hard to explain it in words exactly what it is, but I can see how you've done it in stages, which I think would be very helpful, like in stages of letting go. So it wasn't just this sudden process of the, you're at school and then suddenly, okay, we're just going to do nothing. And I know it's not doing nothing, you're still doing something, because learning happens everywhere, right? But I like that you were able to kind of step that down. And then I really love how you were talking about it as a family. And so like, it's like the education becomes part of the family, which I think is really beautiful. If I want to make a comparison to mainstream schooling, where there's been this kind of separation in some ways, like the parents are trying to be involved, but they're never really sure of what's happening. Whereas it sounds like you were able to fully discuss everything together and ask the children, what do they want? And I just love this idea. Like, it lights me up, like, to think, wow, that the idea or the notion of self-directed learning, I'm going to ask you what it is, but I feel like it's like, what do the children want? What do they want to be directing you or directing the day to be like? And maybe we can just go into that a little bit. If there's like, if you call them principles, I don't know if you call them principles or whatever, but just something about that, because it really is interesting and helpful for us to know that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's a lot of what you just described. It's this whole idea of self-directed. So it's self-led, it's interest-led, co-created. But I think it's exactly what you said. It's like life. It's all around us. That's what we do in life, is we self-direct our lives, right? We make choices, we follow our interests, we are curious about different things. And I think that's really all it's doing in self-direction, is it's saying, let's start that early. Let's start that where you can actually follow what you're interested in, learn how to navigate, learn how to make decisions, learn how to decide, do I really like this or do I not? Learn how to adapt and change. And it's really just allowing the children to have a voice, to have some say, to be able to offer input, suggestions. I mean, they have. One of the biggest learnings I had, I think, was how much innate wisdom they have already, being able to guide themselves. I think we don't have a lot of trust in ourselves as parents to be able to navigate it. And we don't have enough trust in our children that they have that innate wisdom already. And what I've witnessed is that they do. They really do. They know how to guide themselves. And again, another learning I had was that we as parents need to just get out of the way. We need to learn how to co-create with them, to ask questions, to have discussions, to allow them to drive it, because they have a lot of curiosity and they have a lot of interest in various topics and opinions of things from a very young age, that we tend to think, it's like, as an adult, that I need to give this information to you. I need to provide this as a teaching moment, when really a lot of it, they have a lot of those thoughts and opinions and ideas already. Plus they're exposed, I think, with the internet, and their exposure to things, I think, at younger ages now. I think they're already really full of thoughts, ideas, and curiosities, and allowing them to kind of be able to guide it on their own, I just think it's a gift to them. They start to trust themselves as well, or continue to trust themselves that they can do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I really love that. I still have more curiosity though. So like, maybe this is like finer detail, but like, I'm curious around like, for example, do they have already goals? There's kind of a couple of questions. Like, do they have goals around what they want to be? Not that you have to be something, but like, and does that sort of drive what they choose? Or is it like some days they literally just want to play music and other days they want to write? And like, do they kind of naturally want to do some of the things we call formal subjects? Like, I know it kind of maybe flows into life, but I know myself as a teacher, I have that in me of like that wanting, I can see what you're saying, it's letting go of that, but that essence of like, oh wow, this is a good chance to write about it. Like maybe they don't want to write about it, but I wanted to know like more finer details. Could you share something? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think first of all, I think the most important thing to say is that each person is totally different. So, and like I said, I've interviewed many parents and kids, and adults that were self-directed when they were younger. And I think what it has shown is that there's some kids, like you said, that do really want to have like subjects and worksheets and things broken down. And some don't at all. And so I think it's that idea of trying to figure out what that is for you, for each child, how are they motivated? How do they move through it naturally? Where do their interests take them? So I would say typically what I've seen with my kids personally is more the idea of they start down one subject and then it starts to branch out, which is often why I get families to do mind maps, because then you start to see how one subject can really branch into many others, and which typically do include all the subjects that we would have in school, but it's more, you're starting with an interest, you're seeing how it branches off. And then, which I found fascinating, is what you then start to see is a child trying to put the pieces together. Then that's where it's kind of like, what will I be, or what, where will this take me, is starting to say, like my daughter, let's say we sat down and did a chart. She's like, okay, well, this is where I went. These are where the interests that I had. So what could that look like? And so just to give an actual concrete example, so she started when she was about 11 doing makeup. And so she got really interested in makeup. Then it turned into special effects makeup. So then she went into that quite deeply. And then from there, it went to kind of music. So she started playing a bunch of instruments. Then she started really watching like where music is used in films, like in shows, and how that brings emotion. Then she went through like eras of fashion. So, like what did they do in the 30s? How did they dress? What did they do? And then she went into video and watching videos and how they, all of those things were incorporated into a movie so it was interesting because then she was trying to say, well, this is interesting. Now I have all these interests. So what would that look like? And so we played with different things. Like she went a little bit to the medical side of like, could I do medical prosthetics? Because she was doing a lot of prosthetics with special effects. I went into, script writing, story writing to involve all the elements. It went into, videography or like directing film, and so I think when you allow to follow your interests, I think what I see happening is that you're gathering pieces. And then at some point you start to say, I'm going to try to now piece these together. And then that will form then the next project that you take on, which, ultimately leading into what job or career or passion project you kind of take on next. So it's just, I think it's following interests and talking and exploring and continuing to kind of branch out until we start to see it come together. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that was amazing. I was like a little child watching you with curiosity, like, wow, it's so amazing what to create it in that way, to allow them to circulate ideas and the interconnectiveness of it all. And I love that you've started it with a structure, with a mind map. And like at school, for example, yes, all the subjects, you can connect them. Like, as a teacher, I know how to connect subjects, but not in this way where it's like, how do I even put the word on it? Like, it's like with certain purpose, like distinct purpose for that specific child. It's not like, okay, I'm going to talk about Australian history and I'm going to link it with a maths thing and I'm going to link it with a writing thing and I'm going to get them to draw a picture of Indigenous art, like where I'm planning it all and I'm thinking, oh, like I can cover all the different things and make it interactive. That's me still being the creator of something that's not even that meaningful probably to that child, but I'm needing to give that out. But this is amazing, like that. It really is self-directed. The children are definitely like just on their own little journey. And I love how it's kind of gone around. And maybe next year she's like, you know what, that's not my thing. Maybe I want to try something else. And can I ask you something as well? Like, Do you think that with those, like the age that they're at, because they're teens, like, do you think that that could also lead them into kind of entrepreneurial adventures as well, that they could actually act upon these ideas that they have and actually start to physically manifest or create, I don't know, whatever it is, like a book or an item or something? Like, have they ever thought about things like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think both of them, I mean, they have very different interests. But both of them have taken on already entrepreneurial projects from when they were, 10, 11. Let's say for my daughter example, she started doing special effects makeup. So she's clearly very busy every Halloween. But she also then, people saw the work that she was doing and said, well, would you be interested? She's done, fashion photo shoots. She's done, birthday parties, school functions. So there's been many opportunities. And then right before the pandemic, she was working with a studio here, and she was going to start doing like kind of creative, special effects kits so that kids could start learning on their own. And she was going to start working on classes, which ultimately didn't happen because of the pandemic. But, no, I think it very easily leads into entrepreneurialism. My son also, he takes everything apart, did right from when he was little. And then when he was about probably 11 or 12, he started to put them back together, which was fascinating to me to see that, because when he was young, he'd take things apart and you were like, well, what's going to happen? And then when he was, I think it was 11 or 12, he took a motorbike apart completely, like literally every piece was on the garage floor. And I thought, I don't know how this is going to work. And he put it all back together. And then that led him into, someone saw, a custom motorbike that he did and asked him to do that. So I think those things happen naturally, like they happen organically, that you're interested in something, you start sharing, talking to people. That's what happens. So I absolutely see them taking it and for each of them deciding how that works for them. Does it look like a business? Does it look like contract work? Would you rather work for someone else? I think it's really knowing yourself and how you function best and how you feel good. That is the most important part. And the gift that I think they get from doing self-direction is that sense of themselves, which is absolutely the number one thing I've noticed in them, is how much they know themselves. They know what they like. They know what they're motivated by. They know what they don't like. They know who they work well with, who they struggle to work with, how to have those conversations when it's not going well. They've really learned how their bodies function. Yeah, I think that's vitally important as we move through in the world, especially with it changing, the world changing so much, is knowing how to adapt and how we as people can still hold on to ourselves and our voice and our authenticity, and yet still adapt and move and flow in the world.
It's really, really powerful, the way that they've been able to learn this and access this within themselves. And so their ages, they were like 14 and 17. Was that what their ages are now currently? Yeah, we didn't share that in case any of the listeners are curious.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. And then how many years have you been doing the self-directed learning for with them now?
Yeah, so they started when they were 8 and 11. So going on 6 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I just love that. It really is the new paradigm, especially with entrepreneurialism. Like, I feel like nearly everybody had to become an entrepreneur. Like, even, adults, everybody suddenly became an entrepreneur during the pandemic. It's like, what can we do now? What's next? Like, how do I step into that? And the children already know what they're going to be doing, and they're just doing it. And they're already, like, that's already it, right? They're already doing the new paradigm. It's so beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
It is fascinating. I talked to I did an interview with a guy who was in his 40s, and he had gone to a self-directed school all through his childhood. And that was one of the interesting things that I took from the interview with him, was that he said, as an adult now, when he looks back through his movement kind of through life, is that he was able to really follow how he was experiencing something and when it needed to change. And he said that was the gift that he got from self-directed learning, was that he noticed when something needed to change. So if he was in a job or in a business, and that he was able to recognize it and acknowledge it and be okay with it, that it didn't turn into like panic or stress, and to be able to kind of adapt with it and to determine, okay, now what are my next steps? And then to move into something new. And he moved through, I think it was 3 or 4 completely different fields. But he said he said, well, that's what self-directed was that he did when he was younger, so that when he became an adult, he's like, it didn't seem odd to do it. But yet people would look at him and say, well, that's so brave. You completely changed your direction. And he was like, well, no, like, that's what I've always done. It's like, well, this isn't working anymore. I'm going to adjust and change. And now I'm going to do this. And how do I do that? Well, I'm going to do these things. And so it was really interesting to hear that as a, someone in their 40s, how that helped them through their life.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's also explaining the paradigm shift as well. Like, I feel like we've had this like structure in schools where we sit in, rooms, boxes, whatever you want to call them. I like to call them rooms because it's nicer. And that's the mentality. And then you graduate, and then you then move on to a different type of room, if it's an office or a different kind of building. And there's still that same structure. There's still kind of the person who's leading, like the principal, or then there's the boss, or, this is all the old paradigm. Follow this program and then follow that program. But what I'm loving now is breaking free of that, like hearing stories like yours, like what your children are doing. They've already broken free from that. So therefore, this paradigm that they've created is already normal. So therefore, the new paradigm, when it gets to that, won't even be new. It'll just be normalized. And that's what's happening with the world, isn't it? And that's what's happened with a lot of people have been forced to do. Like, people are choosing to quit for certain reasons, or other people have lost jobs for certain reasons, and they're all like, okay, well, what do I do now? So it's just beautiful to be able to share that with you. That wisdom and that story is just exactly what what's been called forth in the book, in the new paradigm of education, and the interconnection of all of that. I love it. I wanted to ask you as well about, like, because you coach or mentor parents, I don't know the exact term you want to call yourself, but do you want to just share something around what you do with parents, like maybe about one of your courses or something that you've helped them with, or something like that? I'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. So the main purpose of the course for me was helping families really dive into what it looks like. So not the theory of, here's, somebody's experience, or here are the steps of things to do, but actually really trying it, because I think that's where the shift came for me in my understanding, and for us as a family, to actually do something, see what you notice, and then make a thoughtful, intentional decision of, is that working? Is that good? Is it good skill development? Are they happy, healthy? Am I happy, healthy? And then adjusting. And so the courses are all very experiential, interactive, very hands-on, a lot of discussion, a lot of reflection, and also very playful, because I think that's an important part that we tend to dismiss, especially as kids get a little bit older. It's like, it's all about play in their younger years, right? Like, everyone's talking about, like, I want this environment where they're playing. And then it's like, suddenly they become, and I don't know what the age is, maybe 10, 12, something like that, preteen, where it's like, well, now we need to get serious, this idea. And I don't think, as an adult, I don't want to live that way. So I don't think that should happen in any form of learning. So I also try to work with families to do kind of fun, silly, creative projects with their families. And you really start to see firsthand what's happening. You're starting to notice more about your children. You're starting to notice more about yourself. And that's where I really feel that people will be able to start to make some shifts. Because I think hearing it and seeing other people do it still looks bold and terrifying. But when you start to take steps and you just say, we're just going to do this activity as a family. And then we're going to say, what did we notice and how did we feel and what happened? We're already shifting. We're already starting to make that paradigm shift. And that's essentially what, the courses that I do, how we work with families. It's extremely interactive and fun, very playful.
That's amazing. So you're helping change not only the children's life, like coaching the parents on how they can then support their children, but ultimately they're needing to change their own life. Is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know for me, and for my husband in our family dynamic is that as we were doing it, it was really us that was holding the learning back because we had these set ways that it needed to look. That you have to, whether it's subjects and I felt like I was already quite open. Like I looked at myself as like, well, I'm open to this. I'm willing to dive in. But then I realized how many ways I was blocking and stopping them from learning and exploring. And so I really feel that they naturally can do it. I mean, I think children naturally follow their instincts and are very interest driven and really feel comfortable flowing like that. And it's us as adults and as parents. And yeah, that was the big moment for me, is that we actually really need to do some of the learning with them to really understand and to be able to let go of some of the ideas and beliefs that we have. And so, yeah, it is, all of the courses are very all family inclusive.
Yeah, it's amazing. It fascinates me, this whole topic, because yeah, I feel like I've got a lot to learn or a lot to kind of let go of in terms of my own structure and my own learning. It's really amazing what you've been doing. I had another question come up then. It's back to the children. It's just around boundaries, because I imagine it's amazing, this unschooling idea and the self-directed learning idea. Are there days where they just want to just take a holiday and just do nothing? And then I don't know, have you ever had to have any boundary talks, or they just seem to naturally have that energy to just want to keep learning? Or I don't know, I just had that question come up.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And I think the first thing that I think about is, do you ever have days that you want to just do nothing? And, and I think I personally beat myself up. Yeah, totally. If I'm feeling that way, that it's like, I need to be productive. Every day I need to get this certain amount of work done. I'm on this type of schedule. And it's, again, these ideas that we need to let go of, that it's like, if I'm feeling really down and low energy, maybe that is the day that I take off and I do something for myself, or I do something and allow myself to really follow, what I instinctually need. And so why is that any different for them? So I think the idea is, both of us, myself included, and the children, learning how, when is that time? When do I allow myself to take the day and do nothing? When do I, try to finish the project or commit to the thing that I'm doing? And it really is, I think it's developing that discernment, and it's knowing yourself well enough to know when you're trying to decide between two things like that. For example, when do I allow myself to just take care of myself, and when do I push myself a little bit to get that done, or to stay on track, or to stay on the schedule? And I think we all need to learn that skill as to when is that? We're not very good. My growing up is that you don't quit, you push, and so we had a discussion in our group with the course, the cohort that's going through it right now, about decision making. And it's like, when is it okay to stop something? Once you said, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and I've committed to learning how to, play the piano, or, do this project. And then when is it okay to stop? And I think it's learning that, am I starting to really know yourself? Am I stopping because of fear? Am I stopping because I'm actually no longer interested? Am I stopping because it doesn't make me feel alive? And so I think it's knowing that. So to me, I think the boundaries are more about discussion and trying to understand where it's coming from, and that self-awareness of why you're feeling the way you are and what would be the best thing for you at that time, and knowing how to discern it. So I think it's just a lot of discussion over. I tried, I think, when they were younger to have more boundaries. And then as time went on, I tried to allow them the space to decide for themselves, through discussion as to, how do you make that decision and how do you feel good about the decision? And if you're going to take the day off, don't do it and feel guilty. Do it and enjoy it and allow your body. That I do, how we work with families. It's extremely interactive and fun, very playful.
That's amazing. So you're helping change not only the children's life, like coaching the parents on how they can then support their children, but ultimately they're needing to change their own life. Is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know for me, and for my husband in our family dynamic, is that as we were doing it, it was really us that was holding the learning back, because we had these set ways that it needed to look, that you have to, whether it's subjects and I felt like I was already quite open. Like I looked at myself as like, well, I'm open to this. I'm willing to dive in. But then I realized how many ways I was blocking and stopping them from learning and exploring. And so I really feel that they naturally can do it. I mean, I think children naturally follow their instincts and are very interest driven and really feel comfortable flowing like that. And it's us as adults and as parents. And yeah, that was the big moment for me, is that we actually really need to do some of the learning with them to really understand and to be able to let go of some of the ideas and beliefs that we have. And so, yeah, it is. All of the courses are very all family inclusive.
Yeah, it's amazing. It fascinates me, this whole topic, because yeah, I feel like I've got a lot to learn, or a lot to kind of let go of in terms of my own structure and my own learning. It's really amazing what you've been doing. I had another question come up then. It's back to the children. It's just around boundaries, because I imagine it's amazing, this unschooling idea and the self-directed learning idea. Are there days where they just want to just take a holiday and just do nothing? And then I don't know, have you ever had to have any boundary talks, or they just seem to naturally have that energy to just want to keep learning? Or I don't know, I just had that question come up.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And I think the first thing that I think about is, do you ever have days that you want to just do nothing? And, and I think I personally beat myself up. Yeah, totally. If I'm feeling that way, that it's like, I need to be productive. Every day I need to get this certain amount of work done. I'm on this type of schedule. And it's, again, these ideas that we need to let go of, that it's like, if I'm feeling really down and low energy, maybe that is the day that I take off and I do something for myself, or I do something and allow myself to really follow, what I instinctually need. And so why is that any different for them? So I think the idea is, both of us, myself included, and the children, learning how, when is that time? When do I allow myself to take the day and do nothing? When do I, try to finish the project or commit to the thing that I'm doing? And it really is, I think it's developing that discernment, and it's knowing yourself well enough to know when you're trying to decide between two things like that. For example, when do I allow myself to just take care of myself, and when do I push myself a little bit to get that done, or to stay on track, or to stay on the schedule? And I think we all need to learn that skill as to when is that? We're not very good. My growing up is that you don't quit, you push, you And so we had a discussion in our group with the cohort that's going through it right now about decision making. And it's like, when is it okay to stop something? Once you said, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and I've committed to learning how to, play the piano or, do this project. And then when is it okay to stop? And I think it's learning that, am I starting to really know yourself? Am I stopping because of fear? Am I stopping because I'm actually no longer interested? Am I stopping because it doesn't make me feel alive? And so I think it's knowing that. So to me, I think the boundaries are more about discussion and trying to understand where it's coming from, and that self-awareness of why you're feeling the way you are and what would be the best thing for you at that time, and knowing how to discern it. So I think it's just a lot of discussion over. I tried, I think, when they were younger to have more boundaries. And then as time went on, I tried to allow them the space to decide for themselves, through discussion as to, how do you make that decision and how do you feel good about the decision? And if you're going to take the day off, don't do it and feel guilty. Do it and enjoy it and allow your body to kind of, regenerate and re-energize so that you're ready for the next day. So I don't know if that is a helpful answer to your question.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much. It's very helpful. And again, it's totally debunking what we know of, like, okay, 5 days a week is school, or 5 days a week is work, 2 days is rest, and 10 minutes you must eat, and then 40 minutes you must learn maths, like all of this kind of structure that's there. And that's why I guess it is kind of a life skill to learn to create boundaries, because I guess when the boundaries have been kind of imposed on you, like in school, for example, do I then turn into somebody that works hard, or do I then turn lazy? And I love that you're saying just to check in with what's the purpose. And I love that, there's no guilt around having the day off, and it's necessary. It's actually very, very necessary for creation. And like when I was creating the book, that was actually part of my own unfolding. It was like a natural unfolding of what is a new paradigm, and my body would just it would feel very expansive and needing like just places of stillness and emptiness or play. Like I'd go surfing and I'd just get the download of what I want to write next. And that was how I created the book. And I was like, this is how learning can be. You can create from a different way. It doesn't have to be in such a framework. So I feel like that's what you're kind of reflecting back to me in a different way, but it's a similar kind of context around that. And I guess also me coming from that lens of a parent of boundaries, with a child, and, being the responsible parent versus allowing them to, step up. And I think that comes with age as well. My child is 4, my little girl's 4, and yours are a bit older and stuff like that. But yeah, totally. I love that. I really, really love that. I'm actually very bad at saying no.
But it is exactly what you said. Is that that when I'm feeling stuck and I can't write something or produce something that I'm trying to, I don't need to try harder. I need to walk away. I need to go and play and go outside or go for a walk, or, that's something that they also need to learn. And I think they can't do that if we're structuring every moment of their day and they don't learn that skill of knowing when do I step away. And I remember reading and seeing in the book many times this idea of inspired action. And I think that's the action that we need to take. And like you just said, when you're writing it, it's like you don't want to write from a place of forcing and making the words come out onto the page. You want it to come from a really healthy, authentic place. And the only way we can do that is to allow ourselves to step away. And so I think we need to model it as parents, and I think we need to allow them to learn when do they step away and when are they able to take inspired action. And we only know it through trying. We only know it through doing it.
Yeah, totally. That notion of perfectionism is kind of out the window now, isn't it? It's definitely the old way. And as you're saying, just to play with it and allow. And some days are like this, some days are like that. I really love it so much. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to know, like, how could people receive your wisdom or connect with you in some way? Could you let us know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the platform is Remindful Life. So you can go on remindfullife.com, and it has all the information about the course and kind of philosophies, a little bit of my background. And also on social media, Instagram and Facebook, there's always interesting kind of daily thoughts, and where you can also kind of get involved in the community, share some comments, ask questions. So you can also find me there at Remindful Life as well.
That's amazing. It makes me want to come and join your community. I think I will.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom. I feel like I've learned so much, and I've also like unlearned so much. It was such a pleasure to connect with you. And yeah, I'll close off our podcast now by saying, be the change that you wish to be in this world, as Mahatma Gandhi shares with all of us. Namaste.
Thank you so much.